Welcome back to Missing. I am Tim here today with Lance. Lance, how are you today?
I'm doing so great today, Tim. It's wonderful to be given this really unique opportunity to air an episode that is, in a sense, the final chapter of a story that we've been telling for years now. And I can't wait for the audience to experience that, like with us. We've been talking about this for a while, and it's about as close to a conclusion or as close to closure as possible. But Tim, how are you before we get into all of this?
I'm doing great, and I agree. It's really nice to introduce this episode and really get to participate in the lives of the family of Patricia Tucker. And of course, we're talking about the Jane Doe, formerly known as Granby Girl, who was only 28 years old when she was murdered and left in the woods outside of Granby, Massachusetts. And her remains were found in November of 1978, but it was estimated that she had been dead since the previous June in 1977.
And her death was ruled a homicide, but her identity remained undiscovered for over 40 years. But Tim, that changed in March of 2023.
Yeah, and this is when we started kind of getting involved in covering the case, and we spoke with Chief Lou Barry, who works with private investigations for the missing, which of course, Lance, is the nonprofit that we are on the board of, and we work with Lou with that. You've heard him on these airwaves often and recently as well. And Othram Labs also got involved in this mystery and helped to make a connection. And again, if you listen to the most recent episode, you will have heard a lot about this case, including an interview with Kristen Middleman from Othram Labs, who really describes exactly what they did in helping to identify Granby Girl as Patricia Tucker again.
And it's just such a great example of how an independent agency like Othram can work with law enforcement on a number of levels. This was something that the town of Granby really needed closure on, like we've said before. And the result of that in the community is this coming together, again, of these organizations. And these are people that all work together to give Patricia Tucker her identity back.
Absolutely. And so this episode, Lance, was recorded at a cemetery, the West Street Cemetery in Granby, Massachusetts on August 8th, 2024. And so we were there with Lou Barry. We were also there with Chief of Granby Police Kevin O'Grady was also there, and he does a dedication. Actually, that's the first clip that we're going to throw it to in just a moment. And there's also a fellow named George Randall, who is a firefighter and among the first on the scene when Patricia's body was found in 1978. And we have a short interview with him later in the episode as well.
And add to that list, Tim, we also have the Northwest District Attorney Dave Sullivan. He speaks briefly as well before Chief O'Grady returns for the official headstone dedication.
And then we've got these three interviews that we did. And you'll hear our voices. And also, you should check out the YouTube video on youtube.com/missingcsm's full video of all this. But we've got Chief Kevin O'Grady first up, and then we've got George Randall, and then we've got Matt Dale, who is Patricia's son. And you have heard him on these airwaves if you've listened to the previous episode. And he is a great guy to talk to, and his story is just incredible. Okay, so we're going to take a quick break before we start playing these clips. As always, you can follow us on social media at MissingCSM. Thanks a lot for listening, and we'll be right back with Chief Kevin O'Grady of the Granby Police Department.
Dedicate the monument to Miss Patricia Tucker, who was known as Granby Girl for possibly about the last 45, 46 years. I'd like to thank some people for coming today. Chief Barry, our retired chief, DA Dave Sullivan, Troopers Jeff Cahill, and I'm sorry, Taco, I don't know if Taco, Mike Vogan from Othram, that was the company that actually helped us identify Miss Tucker. Tim and Lance from Private Investigations for the Missing, they helped fund some of this project. Crystal Dufresne from the DA's office, from the Select Board office. Detective Dave Tromke, who was probably the last person that was part of our department that was actually on that day when Miss Tucker was discovered. And finally, my department, the gentleman for showing up, and George Randall is here, who's going to give us an invocation, please.
Well, good morning, everybody. I'm George Randall, and I wish to extend a warm welcome to all of you to West Cemetery in Granby. In mid-November of 1978, late afternoon or very early evening, I received a call to take a fire truck to Amherst Street as the police department needed our light plant. We were on the scene for quite a while our investigations were ongoing. The reality of the scene was disturbing to many of us, and the memory has stayed with me all of these years. Several of the firemen who went on the call have forgotten the details and scenarios, but not me. I've carried it for 46 years. I can finally put it to rest, but before I do, I want to share some of the details with you. Women of the Church of Christ have placed flowers on this grave every year. Many anonymous people have as well. She has not been forgotten, and I find that comforting. As she lays here, she is amongst many of my friends, so I can assure you that she's in good company. The original marble marker was paid for by a couple of donors. That stone is now at the Granby Historical Association. It should be noted that historical associations and museums are not allowed to have gravestones, but we received it as a gift and we have permission from the state. As such, she will never be forgotten. We have a respectful binder that will tell the story to the visitors of the museum. Before I conclude, I want to thank some people. Thank you to Lou Barry, retired Granby Police Chief, not only for his friendship, but for seeing this case through to conclusion today and asking me to be a part of the service of remembrance. Thank you to Granby Police Chief Kevin O'Grady, Mass State Police, District Attorney's Office, and to any others who may have been involved along the way. Thank you all for never giving up. Again, it is my sincere thanks for all of you being here. Although our work here is now done, I ask you to please never forget Patricia Ann Tucker, for to be remembered is the most fitting tribute to anyone. Thank you.
Okay, so that was Chief O'Grady, and that was George Randall. And now here is Northwest District Attorney Dave Sullivan.
Thanks everybody for being able to make it today. I just want to thank you for being here all these years and remembering, because the special part about this case that was handled by law enforcement was that people never forgot. And when we hear about the flowers being placed, law enforcement, the Granby Police Department, the Mass State Police, later Othram, that this was a human being that lived with other human beings. They never forgot that she was a special person, not knowing her name, but caring about her. And that's so important. And I'm so proud of the folks that kept that memory alive over all these years. And, our Mass State Police, our commander, Jeff Cahill, and Peter Konstantakis, Kevin O'Grady, and in particular, Chief Lou Barry. Lou, I can't say enough that this stayed with you. This case was in your heart. It wasn't in your head, it was in your heart. And what a miracle it was that technology came along through Othram, that we were able to finally give a name and a real meaning to this. So I just want to say that let's remember her for many, many years ahead, and keep her in our hearts.
And Chief O'Grady returns for the official headstone dedication.
Today we gather to dedicate the new headstone for Miss Patricia Ann Tucker, who was murdered in 1978. It's nearly 46 years since her body was discovered on Amherst Street. Ms. Tucker's identity was unknown until March of 2022. In March of 2022, we were informed by Captain Jeff Cahill of the State Police and First Assistant District Attorney Steve Gadney that a biological sample had been gathered and would be submitted to Othram. On January 23, 2023, we were informed of a break in the case, the case that we were all waiting to get this break. A possible relative had been located. A week later, they spoke to Ms. Tucker's niece, who provided information about her sons, and later that day, her identity was confirmed. Since that date, members of the State Police Detective Unit and our detectives have continued to follow up on information they have learned since identifying Ms. Tucker. I'd like to thank District Attorney Dave Sullivan for providing the resources to identify Ms. Tucker and continue the investigation. I'd like to thank Captain Jeff Cahill, Trooper Peter Kostansakis, that's why I said taco, because it's easier, and their continued, and Detective James White and Detective Kurt Carpenter for their tireless efforts on their work. I'd also like to thank retired Chief Lou Berry for his assistance with Detective White with accessing a database that provided additional information used to help locate people that Captain Cahill, Detective White, Detective Carpenter have followed up with. Chief Berry works for the nonprofit Private Investigations for the Missing that works on cold cases in the private sector, which helped give us this information. I'd also like to thank the members of the community led by Anthony Regan, who was the cemetery commissioner at the time that fundraised to get the original marker at the cemetery here. For years, the grave was marked with a simple white cross that read "Unknown Girl." In September of 1998, nearly 20 years after Miss Tucker's body was found, 24 people attended a memorial service at the cemetery while the gravestone was put in place. As seen in the photos today, it reads "Unknown, November 15th, 1978, in God's care." Today, the new stone reads "Patricia Ann Tucker." Our condolences go out to Ms. Tucker's sons and family. I want them to know that we are continuing to work on this case and work towards finding out who murdered Ms. Tucker.
Okay, now we've got a few interviews. First up is Chief Kevin O'Grady.
Kevin O'Grady, I'm the Chief of Police in Granby, Massachusetts. Been the Chief for the past 3 years.
How long have you been with the police force?
Been with the force 28, counting my auxiliary time.
Is this the only job you've had?
Nope. I was in my other life. I was assistant parts manager at a Ford dealership in Holyoke, Mass.
Interesting. Okay, so when did you decide that being in law was going to be?
Well, I was a part-timer, and like I said, I started with the auxiliary program in '96. Really enjoyed helping out, and went part-time. And one of my best friends and my wife pushed me to say, "You can do this." You know, it's like always a scared, financial and everything else. And I'm actually the second officer in the town that worked up from the auxiliary all the way to be Chief of Police. My predecessor also did the same thing.
Very cool.
So, yeah.
When did you first hear about the Granby Girl?
Probably 98 or so, once you got really part-time and involved in things. Maybe 96 when you were riding with the auxiliary. Some of the guys would tell you about different things, but so late 90s.
And you just kind of heard about it in passing?
Yeah, in passing, just that there was a homicide in town and that they had not identified the person or the suspect. And it was just one of those things that, as I moved up through the department, I was in charge of the detective bureau at a different point as a supervisor, and you just take the case was there, you just kind of flip through it, and it's a lot different now than it was then. Everything was handwritten notes, and we have a lot of handwritten notes, but everything's entered in the computer too, and more chronological, trying to piece together what other people had looked at for the past 30, 40 years.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting to get this perspective because this was 1978.
Yep.
And then you were on the force in 1996.
Yep.
So we can say about 20 years later.
Exactly.
So now we're in the second phase of this where we know the name now.
Yep.
So when you were looking back at the old files, how does that compare to you looking back on it to the 90s when you first heard about it? You know what I mean? Like from today's
perspective, it's just amazing. It's like there's the documentation that officers do on a daily basis in the 21st century is so much different than what they did back then. There were notes and things like that, but now everybody dots their I's and crosses their T's, and there's a one-page report on different things that have happened, what you've done so far, and some of that was hard to place together with people that have left, no longer with us themselves, you know, to try to follow up and get any previous information, you know.
And when did you start getting the information that this might be an identification, that this was...
Like I said, back in early 23, like January of 23, no, January, somewhere around there, yeah. And all of a sudden, it just rolled. I mean, within hours, I'd have to look back at a group text with my lieutenant and my detective, and all of a sudden, it's like a picture. Here she is, and I'm like, how did this happen so fast, you know? It was kind of crazy. Again, they knew they had an identity, and at first they ended up contacting a cousin who said, well, maybe your mother was missing. No, my mother was never missing. And, you know, so then also, well, my aunt was missing, and then all of a sudden it snowballed, and all of a sudden these guys had an identity. It was amazing, you know. It was exciting. It was exciting to finally be able to identify this poor person that had been laying here for 40 years, you know.
So what does it mean, like, for your community here to have this happen where she's identified, and it's not like an urban legend anymore. It's not like lore.
I think to speak for myself, it's just nice to know that who she is, know where she came from. You know, we're still trying to piece it together. You know, we're still following up on things, and you know, we have some suspicion on who could have done it, but we haven't been able to prove that yet. But we're still working on it. You know,
still working on it.
Oh yeah.
No.
Yep.
And up next, we have George Randall, who we said previously, this is the firefighter who was among the first on the scene when Patricia's body was found.
My name is George Randall, and at the time of the call, I was a member of the Granby Fire Department, and I received a call to take a truck over to the scene as it was getting dark, and investigators needed lights, so we supplied the lights off the truck for their investigations.
What was it like on the scene?
You know, it's kind of gruesome. I won't go into exact details because that wouldn't be appropriate. But what I saw and what was discussed at the scene has stayed with me all these years. You know, and a lot of the guys that were on the call, they only remember going. They don't remember what they saw or what was said or any comments made. But I remember.
And you must have been trained, right, in your profession. Is there anything that's in the training that prepares you for something like that?
No, nothing prepares you. Fortunately, or unfortunately for me, I learned about death at a young age, and I learned how to deal with it. Sometimes people say, George, you're awfully cold. And sometimes that's the approach you have to take. But the things you see, the things I saw over my 34 years at the fire department, the things that I did, I don't usually discuss because some are pretty graphic and it's private. But I remember, I don't forget. And I'll always remember Patricia. I've kept in touch with Lou over the years, and he's helped me on a research project that I'm working on. And I'd always ask him, what's happening with the Granby Girl? And, you know, total credit to Lou, being the professional that he is, can't tell you. Okay, I get it. But the answer that I started getting was, stay tuned. Stay tuned. And then he said, announcement coming. And I knew not to ask. So once I saw the announcement in the paper, you know, I'm glad it's over. It gives peace to the family, hopefully.
Did memories come rushing back to you?
Oh, sure. That was a quick interview. Yeah, I can tell you all about the truck. I can tell you all about the light plant. And I can tell you about exactly what I saw here. I remember it vividly. But with respect to Patricia, I won't discuss that. It was a very somber scene once we realized what had happened. And
Appreciate it.
just glad it's over.
What happens to you, like professionally and emotionally, when you have discovered this, and then months go by and years go by,
Sure.
and there's still no identity, there's still no answer? How do you deal with that?
You deal with it. You don't let it affect you. But when I was asked to speak here today, I thought it was really going to affect me. Because all those years of saving your emotions, I thought I was going to shed a wee tear. But I was careful about what I typed out. And I didn't want to drag myself out because it could have been a wee tear shed.
Yeah.
You know, you save up all your emotions. And after this call, we had at the fire department, we had a stress debriefing team come in to meet with the crew that went out. And because it seemed like that does affect people. And the stress debriefing team.
Absolutely. We'll figure it out. We'll get 95.
So they worked wonders, but they helped everybody to understand the gravity of the situation. And I think that was a time well spent.
That's interesting. So they worked with all of the people who were part of the team originally?
Yeah. The stress debriefing team has come back to the station over my career 3 times, and because of the nature of the calls that we went out on, you know, and what we witnessed and what we did, and it was good that they came in to help everybody. I highly recommend it to any department.
Yeah.
And finally, this is an interview with Patricia's son, Matt Dale.
Matt Dale from North Carolina, here for what was Granby Girl. Finally gave my mom an actual name and had her name put on the tombstone for finally given recognition, I guess you could say.
Can you take us back to the time when you knew your mom?
Very little of it. I was 5 years old. Really don't have a whole lot of dead memory of it. Just remember it perfect. It's just very little. Very, very little. Didn't have a lot of time or chance, and I guess now I know why.
And not a lot of people, as adults, have an experience that you had.
No, and I hope they don't.
Right. I mean, not a lot of people had that experience as a child, right?
No.
One day, the mom's not there. Is there anything that you can reflect on?
I just remember everybody was going pretty crazy trying to find her. Didn't know what had happened. Back then, there wasn't computers. We didn't have record keeping. We didn't have any of that. We all just done the best we could. Even the files nowadays, nobody has any idea where they're at. So,
The files for your mom?
Yep.
When they were doing the original investigation?
yeah, 'cause we had, they'd hired private detectives, my family had. They had talked to the feds and had reports through them, which, like I said, no computers, and cops can't write. So,
I like the cautious look over your shoulder.
well, I had to make sure no one was standing that close. But I mean, it's a learning experience, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm. What happened in your family from the time that your mom disappeared to when you came to accept that you had to move on?
Didn't have a choice. My dad got with him, and we moved to North Carolina.
How soon after?
All of us took different jobs at it.
Less than a year, best I can remember.
And then when did it all start coming back up again?
Cahill actually called me at work and didn't know anything about it. I don't answer odd numbers, that's out. So then I get home and I have two detectives walking up on my porch. So that kind of started everything all over again. They had no information. They were in the blind, just handed me a phone number and said, call this guy. And obviously it was Officer Cahill. So we started right back from scratch, all over again.
Do you typically see uniformed officers coming up your driveway?
Absolutely not.
So that came as a bit of a surprise?
Yeah, I mean, I know the guys, so that helped.
Yeah.
But still, no, they don't come to my house.
No. And when you see them come up the driveway, no one's like, oh, good.
The first thing I thought of was something might have happened to my kids or my wife or something or another. I had no idea.
Yeah, that must have been an incredible moment of anxiety for you.
Well, not exactly anxiety, or else they'd have come a whole lot faster. They were kind of hesitant on walking up on me.
Got that. Okay. So it starts again. And what was your feeling? Like, how did that hit you?
You couldn't imagine the biggest truck of bricks instantaneous. Yeah, for sure. You go from 50-something to 5 years old in a snap, trying to remember. Because everybody was asking questions, trying to remember this, any detail. I'm like, probably not. I'm sure, because my detail from then may not be what it actually was. It might have been something completely different.
Your recollection.
My recollection.
Yeah. Because you don't know if that's a memory that you created.
Could have. I mean, it could have been told to me.
Exactly.
With family members, and everybody had their own ideas. So, of course, they're all drilling it in your head, too. Or at least speaking of it around you, so you think that's the truth. You have no clue.
And as this is going on, they hadn't identified her officially yet, right?
Actually, within 3 hours.
Within 3 hours?
Yeah. Within 3 hours, I sent, from me talking to Cahill, I sent him my file on my DNA. And he called me back within 3 hours, and I knew.
Thank you for always being
here. You went... I remember when we first talked on the show. This part of the story just is so crazy for me to comprehend. You went from decades to within just days and hours,
hours,
and everything just came back.
Yep.
And you had an answer.
Ish, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
But 80% closer than you'd ever been in your life.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah. And what did that mean? What did that mean to you when you heard that? How were you able to?
You're pretty much dumbfounded. You don't know what the next step is. Having to come up here, that was my next step. Trying to figure out what we're going to do. What did they need from me, and anything I could hope to remember to help them move forward. Had to go through a ton of pictures, and that was all for the press conference the last time. Stuff that, I haven't seen and haven't even tried to remember in years, but I could remember it when they showed it to me.
That must have been overwhelming.
It was. The houses and everything I remembered, just like that. And then when they threw the suspect's picture down in front of me, that was the only thing I told my wife. That's got to see it. That was interesting.
Yeah. You cut his head. Can you just recall that story for us?
I got hit across the back with a belt. Can't remember why. Doesn't matter. We used to have, or I had the Lionel metal train, and had a reaction, turned and swung. And I caught him on this side of his head. And it's still on that belt. It was nice to know that that's what I remember, and that scar was there, so that was the man. Because after all these years, you kind of lose faces and memories. But you can remember once you see little things. And considering I'd done it, yeah, I could actually remember that.
Yeah. This is an important moment with the grave actually having a name now and being identified. What does it mean for you?
That was the whole point. When Lou and I was talking to each other about it, I wanted her to have her name back. I mean, I understand it's been Granby Girl for years and years, and obviously I still had that put on it, but I wanted everybody to know what her name was, not unknown anymore. That was really important. This is something that drove 3 people in my family nearly crazy, trying to figure out what had gone on. Now they're not here to even know. A lot of years have gone by.
It is really bittersweet, but overall, it's a good feeling.
It is.
Yeah.
I mean, at least, like I said, now I know where she's at. I have a good idea of everything else, but I can't speculate. That's these guys' jobs. They'll figure out the facts. And they've been doing a pretty good job of it so far.
How do you define this type of closure?
When I first come up here in February, it had unknown and Granby Girl, and that was it. I knew what they told me was here. It was my mother. The closure is now her name is on the top of that stone. She's got her name back. She's not an unknown. The case ain't exactly closed, but it is for me. Her name's there. Everybody knows who she is. I mean, a lot of these guys here that have been doing this 40 years, now they know who she is too. So it doesn't haunt them, I hope.
Okay, so that was our day at the cemetery in Granby, Massachusetts, Lance. We also went for refreshments at a VFW type place afterwards. That was very nice. It was really great to meet everyone in Granby and some law enforcement, including some police over there. It was a really nice day.
Yeah, it was a great day, and I keep coming back to this like community thing. They invited us to go to have some kind of light breakfasty type foods, fruit, coffee, beverages. And you're right, we met a couple of police officers. We met the Hampden County Sheriff's Department, the Internal Affairs officer, Peter, and we also met Alan, who was very fascinated in the work that we did on the podcast side in regards to handling cold cases and who do you speak with when you speak with law enforcement. He was just super inquisitive. So that was Alan, the Granby Police Department. He's a patrol officer. And that was just a couple of people that we met.
And we've got to say a big thanks to Matt Dale and Matt's wife and also Lisa Binns, who were all present. We got to meet them all, and Lisa and Matt were on our show in the past, and it was just great to meet them in person.
And Tim, I don't know about you, but I'm still icing my hand after that Matt Dale handshake. The guy has the strongest handshake, without question, that I've ever experienced in my life. So appreciate him not going easy on me with that. But he's one of the best people to interview, and I love the interview at the cemetery right there. You know, the name is finally on the headstone, and a lot of what we talked about was a little bit of a recap of our previous conversation with him when he came on the show. But this was very cool to see him in person and to, even though he was wearing sunglasses, see the actual emotion on his face as he recalled the moment when he discovered this, when this was all going down and his life was one way, and then 48 hours later, it's completely different. And I think you get a lot of real, genuine, like earnest honesty out of someone like that.
All right. Thanks a lot for listening, everybody. This was truly a special experience for us, and I hope you felt that as well.